What's in that? And LHF, we are in for the second game of the show match hosted by JC Spartan for $45, and Ert is making a replacement of Kimo, and we are going to be playing on Marsh this second game. The score is so far 1-0 for the team of basically the Teeth of Death, Fox+Joe+Shelty, whereas HerroOP+iCaro, they didn't have such a great game last time around, but let's see if it's going to be turning with Ert. We are also seeing switches in the gods, as iCaro is switching into Ra from Isis, whereas HerroOP is switching into Loki, so no Thors, whereas Shelty is still sticking with Thor, and I don't really blame him, he was playing quite well with it. Ert is Ra, of course. I'm Joe Isis, and last on Fox is Ra. Okay, so it's pretty much the same in there, just a few switches on the opposite side of the map. We are looking at HerroOP, who is spawning as the first one, who is going to be facing whom? Probably nobody, he's in the pocket if I see this correctly. Ert is going to be on the left, and he is against Fox, and oh well, this is going to be a very nice duel between two very capable Ras, especially from what we have seen in the last game from Fox. And well, in the pocket HerroOP, well, that's not really all that ideal. Usually want to have the Norse and other aggressive civilizations a bit more to the front. And a safe-ish gold, of course, even though not altogether safe, it's reasonably okay, especially since we don't have any Turmas yet again. And Hippos on the right, Deer on the left, and interesting gold at the back, and we are going to be seeing a lot more of that. Probably somewhere in here is going to be extra gold, and there is a channel, as you can see, as the map is getting a bit lower on that part of the map. In the meantime, iCaro is on the other flank. He's going to be facing against Thor, against Shelty. So that's basically a rat from last game, and this time around we are definitely interested to see if this DC is going to be a bit better protected by iCaro than in the first game. It definitely should be, because it's a whole lot closer and it's basically guarding this choke point. That's exactly what he needs to do. Once he controls this DC, it's going to be near impossible for Shelty to come through for like, I don't know, at least 15 minutes until he's Mythic and such. And there are some relics being taken, and the first one is cheaper temple researches. That's nice. That's definitely nice, and I'm thinking a bit more importantly, he's taking it from his opponent, as of course he would be wanting them for extra upgrades on his mythical units and such. Better wall hit points. That's a very sweet one, and especially one that the Egyptian should get. But since he wasn't walling last game around, probably not all that important. Trio of helpful monkeys, as we are switching into Shelty's base, and his gold is pretty much safe, and we already see extra gold on the right, and a whole lot of it, as you can see, with extra hippos. This is sweet. This is actually a really good map for him. Really good map, as iCaro is scouting also with the piggies, not only at the top, but also at the bottom, looking for the extra TC and the gold as well at the bottom. Exactly the gold that we were talking about. A lot of hippos all around the map. Nice to see for all of the players, of course, and Ert is so far seeing just one extra gold at the back, but I'm fairly certain there's going to be more of them hidden in the darkness behind his home base. Faster village of wood and gold generates, very sweet relic. Better build in LOS, yet another pretty great one. Infantry attack versus Titans. Well, in this game, I would consider it pretty important for the Norse. Because I would be expecting that if the game goes into late game, as opposed to the first one, we should be seeing Titans, and in that case, especially for the Thor, for Shelty, the Heroes of Ragnarok having extra bonus against Titan. 300 bonus, that's like a ton. 300 bonus is so much, especially for Heroes of Ragnarok. Potentially even with flaming weapons, that they could be taking the Titan down in, I don't know, really soon. I haven't really seen it in action yet, I think. So it's going to be just a whole lot sooner. And that could make a lot of difference, especially with the villages farming rate coming up for Fox. And oh man, that's going to be one hell of a rain for him. 10% better farming rate for Ra. Better tower range than melee attack, yet another very great relic. Oh man, this map is actually spawned with such great relics. Buildings Crush armor, also pretty sweet. And Priest is just now loafing around, and I think he's basically halfway guard in this relic. Right now he's going to be scouting into the darkness, and maybe just waiting once he gets hands of the Pharaoh, which I think he should be getting sometime soon. And that's of course going to be helping him quite a lot. Repositioning of the villages so that he's a bit more efficient. But right now he's going to be, yet again doing that. And I think it's kind of unlucky, because he needed to actually make the camp on the longer side as he's going for the pickaxe. As that of course would be slightly better for him but he opted for this option as he wants it to be a bit more safe, and that he has a better option to retreat to the tower and defend himself from raiding from his opponents. Shelty in the meantime is gathering food quite far away from his base. He kinda needs to be careful, as players are of course advancing into the classical Aegis Sundown soon. So far they are just picking up the relics. Let's check all the gods. Ptach, 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 absolutely everywhere. Bast for Joe, he's Isis of course, Freya for Shelty. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Somebody's missing in here. There's just a whole lot of colors that I'm actually not seeing. So somebody is not advancing yet. I haven't seen who it was. But pretty decent raiding right now by HerroOP, and he's attempting to steal the very important relic. And that's really something that he should be getting, because 20% cheaper was, that makes a lot of difference, especially on a map that is similar to Watering Hole in the detail that you are having a lot of choke points. Of course, we are going to be having Spy, so that HerroOP knows where to raid a bit later. But Shelty, of course, is going to be up to him. And, well, it cost one extra villager. I think even one died in there. So, yeah, the damage has been done, and it should be HerroOP right now having the upper hand. In the meantime, though, he is, or at the same time, he is quite far away from him. He's basically on the other side of the map. So it's not like it's going to be all that easy. And Shelty is going for the same strat for the back TC. And, of course, he is up for the same game, and same could be said about iCaro. Definitely the same strategy, as we are looking pretty much the same for Ert as well, but unfortunately he was a bit slower, which means that he cannot really take full effect from the rain of his ally Fox, which is slightly unfortunate, but still I think that he's having at least enough of it. He missed like 20 seconds, but still it's going to be pretty much fine for him, and yep, it shouldn't be all that much of a problem. I definitely am looking forward to Ert casting rain right after him, so that they can deny the rain from his opponent. From iCaro, that would definitely be working for them quite well. A lot of farms in here, and of course with the relic being hidden in here, villagers farming rate and wood and gold get rates, he's definitely going to be having a very good economy on steroids. Layer 2 already having almost the resources, or rather getting there with the heroic age, as we are looking at the Isis, who is nicely walling himself in. But that's pretty much it for the action. But let's not be all that hasty, as HerroOP is having a very good army. Unfortunately, still hasn't been able to deposit the relic. And the guy is having just 5 hit points, so careful about him, biscuit friend. But the TC in the front from Joe is definitely signaling yet again the same strategy as last game, but he needs to be a whole lot more careful, because this raid wasn't really present in the last game. He wasn't under such pressure, and Shelty in the meantime is not really helping him all that much. He doesn't have the army yet. He was just building a TC at the back, but since he has just finished going for the longhouse, he should be kinda alright. And the reason for the Herseers, right now it makes sense to me, is because he went for the town center and he couldn't spare any soldiers to build long houses, which meant that the only unit that he could be making were Herseers. They are kinda okay at the start, even though they are expensive and not all that efficient. They are not bad. They can get rid of the pesky mythic units in the early stage. So yeah, it kinda makes sense. And it's very interesting build order from him that I haven't really seen all that much just yet. It's in the competitive games. Blue having a lot of idle army around. It seems like that he was just healed, as Valkyrie is doing what she is good at. And we are also seeing Hunt quite unsafe right now from HerroOP, but at the same time it's reasonably safe. It's not like completely unsafe, because of course the blue player is the one raiding and applying pressure, which means that Shelty cannot really spare the units all that much. In the meantime, he's walling himself in, even from his ally. He needs to make a gate in there, otherwise he might be actually putting his ally into problems sometime soon. But of course he is just now trying to make sure that he isn't surprised by anything, and yet again iCaro is going quite passively for it. He's not going for basically quite clear TC that would be very helpful for any kind of defense, and he was the last with rain of course, so he is going to be quite far behind, especially looking at the budget that has just died in this position. Can you still see which one it was? I don't see the colors, but probably it was steals, kinda makes sense. As Fox is at 3 TCs, and well, market is already going to be coming up for Ert, who is still at 2, but he seems to be quite comfortable at that. Oh man, that's a nice one. Oh well. Okay, so that's goodbye for Shelty, because not only has he lost a lot of villages to just the locals, he's of course going to be losing extra ones to the raiding from HerroOP, so it was very nicely timed, and almost all of them, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh man, that's 8 villages dead on hand, and that's a huge blow. That's a pretty huge blow, and even though of course HerroOP is going to be losing the units, it's not like it matters all that much, and finally iCaro has been able to use this time to capture the front DC and basically secure the position for himself. We have seen some water shenanigans a bit before. It was rather in the last game from Fox. Well, that's an interesting trade route. That's dangerously close to battle lines. And Joe should be really hurrying up with the walls, because of course if he doesn't, they're going to be wide open, and he needs to put a wall about here. That to be exactly what he needs to do, and I'm not exactly sure if this is possible. This should be. And this is not really going to be easy at all to protect this part of the map. Not really easy at all, as we are looking at Ert and Fox having a bit of a big year amongst themselves, watching the birds fly. Ert is right now in the middle, basically trying to make sure that his front DC is not going to be captured, whereas at the bottom HerroOP has just finished with the town center himself, exactly on time. Well, that was kind of lucky for him, because of course the Petsukos would be a pretty big problem, but we are already seeing Locust being cast from Fox, pretty nice one, and we are also seeing Tornado, which is, in the yellow's base. Oh yeah, because I'm right now totally confused. Because I for a moment thought that actually Ert is playing with Shelty. I don't know why, but he of course isn't, in which case this makes kinda sense, but unfortunately he wasn't really all that lucky with the placement. He didn't kill the DC, and if he did, you can see the Scurry coming up. Oh man, that would have been a terrible disaster for, of course, Shelty, but he survived and he's going to be well into the game, still pretty much. Petsuchostra, so that's even upgraded Petsucha in here. Interesting very much for iCaro, so that's going to be a spend from him, very interesting to see and not often seen. And of course there's going to be a push into the front DC of Joe reasonably soon, as Blue is already set up right next to the front DC of Shelty. This is Shelty front DC, and that means that it's not going to be easy for them to capture at all. In the meantime, quite gutsy. All coming up with villages. Oh no, it's just the Petsukos together with the budget. And that also means this is very important, because it means that there's not going to be any kind of threat from the water, potentially from Shelty. And since Shelty is probably hurrying up, into how's it called? Into Mythic Rage for Balder. It's not really going to be all that effective, but with the big battle right now happening right next to Fox, we are also going to be curious if maybe Ert can make this happen, because we are seeing dogs from both sides. But of course, only Ert is in the Mythical Age already. Literally the only one, so that was a pretty good strategy from me, a pretty good idea. And with the flaming weapons coming up, it's looking like that Fox is going to lose the front DC even with the fight with the mercenaries, because the Mythical units are just too big in numbers. And the Battle Boars together with the Bounty Giant are going to be making sure that the DC is down, and that's a pretty huge problem for Fox, because the next in line is going to be this Migdol Stronghold, especially with the catapults coming up in here. In the meantime, the full health of Joe is needed on the right side, with Frost right now being cast, basically freezing all the army from iCaro, which is nice to see for them, and it's even stopping the Migdol from coming up, which is very important at this stage, because if it didn't, then of course Shelty would be in deep trouble. He is in them anyway, and it's going to be all up to Joe if he can secure him, or rather save him. As on the left, Fox is not going to be pushing through, especially since he's against two opponents, and this is really interesting. It's almost as if who is going to be winning the side first. But if I had to guess, this side is basically won right now by Ert together with the blue player HerroOP, as the Petsuka is yet again in pretty decent numbers, and we are just missing the Petsukostra, especially exactly as iCaro is having on the right. So yeah, you can see Fox is right now forced to go quite a lot back, as Ert is definitely a strong addition to the team, as on the right we are seeing the retreat of iCaro since he is just alone. And well, finally the switch is going to be coming in, as HerroOP is going to be joining his teammate, but is it going to be fast enough? I'm not exactly all that sure, because Shelty of course had a pretty good opportunity to get up. Interesting use of the forest fire, which kinda makes sense, because he wants to make sure that this part of the map is going to be free, and there's not anywhere that the units could be running away to. And he was trying to hit also, of course those siege towers, but unfortunately they weren't too close and it didn't really do the damage that he hoped for. Meantime, Joe coming in with the ancestors, and they are definitely going to be pushing the agenda a bit forward. So this side of the map seems to be needing full attention of HerroOP. He really wouldn't be on the left side anymore. Let's check some military upgrades. Copper shields from Blue. Son of Osiris is going to be coming in from Joe, as we are looking at throwing Axemen with just copper shields right now from Shelty. And the tornado really did its damage. And the push from iCaro also on top of that. Heavy Charion's copper shield. Definitely nice. And those frost giants, they are definitely working. I'm kinda surprised that iCaro is not supplying even more priests. He's literally not building them, as he's coming for Horus. Some other interesting upgrades coming up. Well, Osiris from Fox, he definitely needs that. Heavy spearman from Joe. Yeah, well, it's not like we've seen all that many cavalry, just a few camels, that's probably a reason for that. And well, where is the Son of Osiris? Quite close by, and is he full health? Yes, he is. But much more importantly, the Mythic Lage is super important for the catapults, because they will be able to help Shelty's army on the land quite a lot, and they will be able to get rid of the Migros and potentially even the TC pretty soon. So let's see if that's going to be what will happen on the right. In the meantime, on the left, of course, Ert is basically camped. And just as we are looking at him, oh man, that's a sad situation for Shelty. Sad indeed, because Shelty is dropped to just the one down center as Fox is advancing into Mythical Age. And I'm right now just waiting. Well, that's slaughter of the villages, of course, because of the chariot archers. I'm waiting for Fox if he's going to be making a push on the front DC, but I'm not all that sure that he can, because purple player, which is 4, no, it's 5, is having at least some kind of gold that he could be using. To get some mercenaries up, but much more importantly, Shelty is dropped to 0 TCs through another tornado on top of his base, and he is getting the treatment that actually HerroOP got last game. And well, let's see how he likes the taste of it. Well, that's of course going to be pretty easy for iCaro to push right now. I'm not exactly sure what the plan is going to be, because of course 15 cents from iCaro are in here as well, and that was for villages to steal the TC at the back of Shelty's base. So Shelty has been more or less eliminated. He's down to just 7 villages. A few more in here, but it's like it. 19 villages for him. 20. Yeah, 20. Few more at the back potentially. 36, okay. So we are stopping the count at 36, but that's probably not going to be enough, of course, because that's just too few to even go for some kind of reasonable Ragnarok. Especially since you don't have any kind of TC, of course. Son of Osiris right now trying to survive. Rather keep his... what? Are we having some mercenary meet up or whatnot? Not exactly sure, but this game should be reasonably over right now, as I don't see how Shelty could be coming back, especially with iCaro right now being at 5 TCs already. Almost already, as he's taking all the town centers, and Fox right now going into the middle, trying to secure himself right in the middle of the trade route, which is basically the last chance for them. But I'm thinking there's still a lot of gold for them, potentially. Yeah, there's a lot of gold all around the map. We are at just 70 minutes, so it's not like the trade is all that crucial, and they can do just fine with all this. And that was the reason for the mercenaries actually being stockpiled in there. And since they are us, they can survive a whole lot longer. With the upgrade, that is... I don't know what gold. Of Osiris, of course, paying off. This is definitely a nice idea right now from Fox, and if they pull this off, that's going to be one hell of a steal. One hell of a steal. Right now, this should be stealing all the army of HerroOP from the attack, but I'm fairly certain that it's going to be very tough for Joe at 3 TCs to hold off iCaro at 5. Shelty and HerroOP not in the Mythical Age, either of them. But HerroOP is already coming through there. That might be a big problem. That might be the last nail in the coffin, with Joe being at champions and shields, whereas iCaro is having heavy cavalry and nail on top of that. As you are moving back to the battle at the bottom, and of course, we are right now seeing Rainbow Winter being fully cast, and that's going to result into Fenris Wolf Brood. So is he going to be making them? And so far he seems to be sticking with just Hersiers. It might be some kind of idea for him, but he definitely needs to be careful focusing on the Son of Osiris, because Yeah, he's right now getting a lot of damage, even though he has made a ton of towers to protect himself against anything. It's still not all the safe for this guy, and of course it's not safe for himself in the home base, as he is under heavy pressure right now with catapults coming right in the middle of his base. And working of course on the wall-in, the protective wall-in, so not even mercenaries can touch those guys. Oh man, somebody's coming in for the town centers. And the build of the hill fort by one Herser in here. That's definitely a nice side build by HerroOP, and they are just right now aiming to clinch the game for themselves, even though Shelty is still very much in the game, interestingly enough. No, 6. Oh, he's actually having, interestingly enough, resources, so he could definitely be doing a lot of damage, but he needs some rebuilding power. He's having decent amount of villages, but he doesn't have all that many Lusarks from the villages to get the TC, but he's right now working on it. And really, they are definitely not giving up, and they have already killed the very nice raiding party by Ert without killing the town center, so that's a pretty big bummer right here. But at the same time, Ert has killed the TC on the left, of course, without all that much of a opposition, which means that Fox is down to just one town center, and it's going to be up to him if he can somehow going to be coming for the town center in the middle, and this is just a base trade. This is just a base trade right now between the players and between the teams. Wolfies are definitely going to be in here. Yeah, and this wolf pack is going to be making an appearance. Son of Osiris needs to be a whole lot better protected because he's going to be the only weapon against those guys. They're going to be very fast indeed. But of course, as iCaro is also spending a few units into the middle, he's going to be attempting together with HerroOP to get rid of the front build by Fox, and once they are able to do that, because they have just stopped the town center at the last moment, it was just a few hit points from getting finished, this is going to be pretty much it from the front build, I'm thinking, and it might be it for the game or not. Well, Fox is in a terrible situation, like absolutely terrible, because Ert is at 4 TCs and is absolutely killing him, but in the right side it doesn't look all that bad. Anjo is at 3 TCs, quite okay-ish, with Shelty right now being back at 1, and he's probably going to be making an attempt at the TCs in his home base reasonably soon. He doesn't have Masons, unfortunately, but buildings are already coming up, and that's basically the reason, because he knows that something is brewing, and something might be coming his way pretty soon. And definitely good idea with the boats, and yet another attempt to land a bit sooner, or a bit closer to the opponents from Anjo right now, not from Fox. I'm right not all that sure if maybe this attempt didn't cost Fox all that he had, all the power that he had, because of course this CC is being stolen. This one is just a question of time before it is stolen as well, and he will need some... yeah, oh. That's a pretty big O right now from Anjo, and definitely pretty big help, because if he can set up himself in here, he might still be able to do something together with Fox, who is dealing so much damage through the buildings that it's really paying off, and Shelty is still very much in the game. Are we going to be seeing some Titans or whatnot? No. Just bronze shields from Ert, I'm Joe, and also from Caro. As Caro is joining a whole lot more into the middle, but he definitely needs to, because of course there's not much fighting happening on the right side. Every battles are right now happening in the middle from I'm Joe and Shelty. And it's really almost looking like they actually might be able to somehow turn this off, rather turn this around. Not exactly sure how they would be able to do so. This is a very nice attempt right now by Caro, basically to stop the exact attempt by Joe on the TC, but I'm thinking it's too far away to be assaulted from there, which means that we are returning back to the battle in the middle, and the Thompson right now being back up for HerroOP is definitely a pretty big deal, as those horses and army from Shelty is not going to be all that strong anymore. Baseline of upgrades, with the opponent we are having bronze, copper. Joe's Son of Osiris has already died in his attempt to take the TC, I'm thinking. Yeah, exactly, but with all the army in there, there still might be some other attempts on it, and especially if Ert doesn't finish with cleaning up the water. And since he hasn't even started with that, I'm not all that sure that he can. So it's going to be basically one less TC for him. With basically Fox doing all he can to stop this TC from coming up. But he's not really all that successful in it, or is he? He actually is. Right now Chariot Archers will be getting rid of the villagers. So it's going to be Ert just at 3. And that might be manageable for him, but they need to be careful on the right side because there's again slaughter of villages of Shelty as he is attempting to build a safe hill fort to protect his TC, but of course with the very nice natural wall of all the forest. iCaro is having a very easy time getting on top of the TC, and with all the extra town centers being at 5, Champion Camelry with Copper Mile and Copper Shields, he is quite alright to reduce Shelty to just 0 TCs yet again. And he's going to be continuing with Joe pretty soon, and the TC is probably going to be next in line. So of course also continuing a bit more into the forward, as HerroOP is going for yet another attempt at the back build. And this time it seems like that it's going to be successful, especially with the siege works being supported by iCaro, and they will be supplying exactly the catapults that is exactly what is needed. And it will stop the trade, which will of course be a pretty big problem for both Fox and the green player. I am Joe. So front base basically being cleared up by HerroOP's ballistas, which means that the last battle in the front is right now going to be happening on the left, but not really for much longer. As Joe is not really giving up at all, literally at all, and even against all those towers he's still going for the town center and hoping for the best. But yeah, with all the catapults from Earth, it's not really going to be successful anytime soon. But what mustn't we forget is the fact that actually Fox has been able to retake his main TC. And that's a pretty huge bonus for him. It's nice ball in from the catapults. Because this will allow him to supply mercenaries into the middle, and it's going to be all up to the fact if they can somehow protect the town center and the trade route on the right, which they weren't able to do so, and I'm thinking this is going to be it. Yeah, Shelty is right now resigning because this means no gold left for the ATs of Death plus Fox+Shelty, and that means that we are finally seeing resigns after a very long battle, a lot longer than it actually looked in the start, or like in 15 minutes. It looked like that it should be reasonably easy, and end, it was anything but. So nicely played. Tenacity from the ATs of Death almost paying off, but the advantage from Absoluts plus GSS was just a bit too strong in the start, rather, to begin with. Let's check the post game. With Ert, I think he actually really was the best player in this game. Really, he made a ton of difference. Made a ton of difference in here. Pulled a pretty big load against Fox. Was the strongest player of Dot plus Lat the first game. Betsukhostra. This is a unit you don't really see all that often, and in such big numbers as we have seen from iCaro this time around. Was nice novelty. Yeah, this was a pretty tough situation for Shelty. It was just a huge drop. He lost absolutely everything in there as far as army goes, and in the villages he also dropped quite significantly. Couldn't get back into the Ragnarok situation. Well, GG.